right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Smile 2. And if you've been listening to this show since 2022, back when the first Smile came out, you would know I really love that movie. I'm not always the biggest fan of, that kind of horror, the jump scare-y kind of horror, but I was really into that one. And I like this one even more, and I feel like even people who didn't like the first one are really loving this movie. So it's pretty cool to see just everybody kind of coming around to this series or franchise. I mean, we'll see if things continue from here, but it's great to see that everybody is really liking this movie. And we've got a great conversation coming up about it. Joining me, we've got Chris Scalzo from the First Run and Screen Run, and we get into a lot of great puzzle pieces. I think maybe a couple things that came up on the first Smile episode, but for the most part, all fresh things because it is a very different movie from the first one. So that's coming up in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on social media at PiecingPod, and don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. With that said, let's get into this conversation about Smile 2. All right, Chris Scalzo is joining me to talk about Smile 2. How's it going, Chris?
So far, so good. Everything's going great. Yourself?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. I've got my Voss water with me. Just kidding. I don't, but I wish I did. I should really have a sponsor at this point after doing this show for 6 years. I should have Voss, shouldn't I?
Absolutely. Yeah. Make sure too, it's got to be a glass bottle. So when things shatter or you drop it or put it on down things, you want to get that heft. You want to hear that sound. Absolutely.
I hopefully this SM7B wouldn't pick up when it clinks as I hit it down on the desk every time. But no, for sure. Smile 2 is it's doing great in the box office. I feel like it's kind of a surprise for a lot of people. I was a big supporter of the first Smile. How were you with the first Smile? Did you enjoy that movie?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of fun with that one. I thought it was good, maybe not great, but I enjoyed it. I think I was sold when they had that first trailer when her friend comes to see her at her car.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure it was in the trailer. Everybody sees it, but I still won't ruin it for you. But I'm like, oh, this could be kind of something special. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. And I was really kind of amped up and looking forward to this one. It can go one of two ways when you're dealing with sequels, but thankfully this was more a Ouija 2 Origin of Evil more than, I don't know. Insert your bad sequel here.
Absolutely. Well, before we get too deep into it, it is your first time on the show, so tell my listeners a little about you and what you do.
So my name is Chris Scalzo. I host a couple shows, my main one being The First Run, where you can find it at thefirstrun.com, where my buddy Matt and I, much like most middle-aged white guys, have a podcast about, movies. Mm-hmm. We do theatrical releases every week. We then we have certain games at the end too. Sometimes we'll do 2 films. We used to do 2 all the time, but I just got old and tired.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been doing ours for like 12 years.
Jeez.
And then I do a Screen Run with the lady Juan, who I believe you've spoken with before.
Absolutely.
And that one we'll just do a run of something. Like we did all the Alien films, or we did all the John Carpenter movies for one season, that kind of thing. We just wrapped up our Body Snatchers season 2 a couple months ago. So
you could do a trauma horror Screen Run season. That could be good.
I don't know if I can get her on board for that. The Carpenter run was tough to begin with. She's not the biggest fan of horror films. Trauma, that's a unique.
Oh, I meant trauma, as in Smile would be an entry on that season. So but
fair enough. I guess no. That
trauma would be fun. Actually, you should do a trauma. Talk her into it. Get her to do it. But
All right, we're going to start with all the Toxic Avenger films, and then we'll go maybe Terra Firma. We'll go from there.
Yeah, lots of gloop. But yes, getting back to Smile 2, I feel like, and this is going to come up as we start getting into the puzzle pieces here, but I feel like one of the things that I liked so much about this movie, and I think maybe is part of the reason why a lot of people seem to be liking it more than the first one, is this movie is almost like 2 movies in one. It's like a sequel to Smile. It's a direct sequel, but then it's also this interesting kind of breakdown of just the hell that pop stars go through because of the constant, attention and need from everyone in their atmospheres. And
Sure.
I think it makes for as much as I really like the first Smile, I think it makes for a richer story with a better lead character, and there's just a lot more to kind of get involved with here.
Oh, I agree with you entirely. I think delving into the public demands that pop stars have, particularly in the social media world we have now, where people are available like 24/7, right? And you can
Mhm.
find out or see what they're doing or take up their time, whatever the case may be, at any point. I'm old enough where it was a big deal that I had a beeper, right?
Yeah.
So before that, if you couldn't get a hold of somebody, you couldn't get a hold of them.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not the way things are now. But it's the pressure on them, yeah, and I think the key too for this film of why it's so successful is Naomi Scott.
Yeah.
I think that she is fantastic in this, really bears the weight, and the range she has to exhibit in this film is fantastic. I was absolutely blown away by her in this.
Yeah, I agree completely, and, yeah, I think, this is a really interesting one to get into because, like I said, we got these kind of 2 angles to get into it from, but, with that said, let's start getting into it. What do you have for your first puzzle piece here for Smile 2?
I'm Here's where I think you're gonna be so disappointed in me, but I feel like all of mine are just so lazy kinda layups, but so Scott had said that she drew for her performance from Lady Gaga, but for me, it's to kind of go on with what you're saying is Britney and
Mhm.
the breakdown that she had, right,
Yeah.
and all the horrible stuff that she had to go through, and I think there's definitely that Parker Finn that's one of his influences on this film, like you said, is just the pressure that these stars have, and just kind of tracing the breakdowns and all these horrible things that kind of happen. Now, granted, Sky's story is a little different. It's drugs, but then also there's a deeper trauma and guilt associated, right, with her what she's going through that the film
Yeah.
explores. But I think clearly, for me, that's like the first one that really jumped out at me.
Yeah, it's funny, I was thinking about that because, definitely I think that I think you're right, as much as the character seems a lot like Lady Gaga, I think Britney Spears is the clear influence here in her entire breakdown and everything that went down at that point. It's funny, like, when that True Story movie comes out, which I know is in the works at this point, we'll probably be bringing up Smile 2 as a puzzle piece for
Right.
that episode when that movie comes out. But yeah, it's a heavy thing. Not a puzzle piece I was going to include, but I mean the Taylor Swift Eras tour. Just pop stars right now
Mhm.
are, especially female pop stars, are the biggest thing, and so it's kind of a ripe moment, I guess, to explore that kind of thing. And I think, yeah, I think Britney Spears is a great place to start this off with. And I'm going to go to a movie that I think we probably also talked a little bit about Britney Spears during the episode on. That's Brady Corbett's Vox Lux with Natalie Portman
Mhm.
as a pop star whose life is basically hugely affected by this traumatic incident that reverberates through her life, and it goes in very different directions. And both movies use that kind of backdrop of pop stardom that looks so glitzy and glamorous and everything, but to then explore just all the awful stuff that these people have, sometimes gone through. And Brady Corbett's about to have huge moment with the Brutalist, which everybody is so excited about. I cannot wait to see that. But Vox Lux is a very love it or hate it divisive film, but I loved that movie when it came out. And it was something that as soon as this trailer came out, it was kind of bringing the vibes from that one.
I That is in my queue. I have not seen it yet. That's what the meme, like, no, the world tour. That's what that meme is from, right?
Actually, that no, that is from Justin Timberlake getting arrested for a DUI, and
Oh, but didn't
yeah,
she
and
say it? Wasn't there a scene where she screams about the tour or something like
that I
that in that
think there
film?
is something like that, but the world tour thing, that
Oh,
is,
that's specifically
yeah,
Timberlake.
I think the cop that was pulling him over was like, he was like kind of mumbling to himself, Justin Timberlake, and he was like, "Oh, this is gonna ruin the tour," and the cop is like, "What tour?" And he goes, "The world tour." So that's what,
I'm not up on my,
yeah,
former
that's yeah.
boy band,
Yeah, I'm glad we
arrests.
got that on this episode. We got that, on print here for the, for all the podcast listeners out there.
Well, it just hit
But
me
yeah,
too. It just I don't know why I didn't connect this to time because I was such a big fan of hers when I was a kid. choose Drew Barrymore as well, because
Mm,
she had her own problems with drugs and stardom and all that stuff. It didn't even
yeah.
occur to me until I'm thinking of, like, I was looking at the listing of the cast. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, Drew is herself." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, Drew. Dear Lord, yeah."
Yeah, that's a good little bit of, like, meta casting, absolutely, to include in there, so for
Yeah.
sure. Well, what do you got for your next piece?
I'm gonna go again, the other layup for me, in fact, I part of me is one of the things I almost hold against the film is Ray Nicholson, specifically to the Kubrickian stare.
Mm,
Jack Torrance, of the smile. I know the core of the smile and why it works and why it's creepy, right? Is that you smile without your eyes.
yeah,
Keep your eyes out of the equation, and then I guess I read too. He says you tilt your head a little bit,
just a
don't use your
tad.
eyes, yeah,
Yeah,
and then you get it. And so clearly, so not only is he kind of calling back to The Shining, I think, and Jack Torrance, but he even casts his kid to
mhm,
play one of the characters in the film. So, but it's not just the smile itself. It does. I think the film does. I know I don't want to get ahead of my skis here, talking about
yeah,
comparing this to The Shining,
mm,
but I just the overall sense of dread that Finn is able to induce. And I think it's one of the things he balances so well is that it has some really great jump scares. And I'm not against jump scares. I mean, I
sure,
I don't want a cat jumping out of a closet at me, right? I'm
mhm,
done with that.
yeah,
But you give me a good jump scare with a persistent feeling of dread,
yeah,
and I'm all in. And I
yeah.
think that, like The Shining, and then you throw in the stare, there is this overwhelming feeling of dread that permeates this film.
No, I completely agree, and even, aside from that casting, which is some brilliant stunt casting, honestly, but, aside from that, you do have a character whose mental state is constantly degrading, and you've got a lot of stuff that you do not know,
Right.
is this actually happening? Is this all in their head? Whose head is it in necessarily? I mean, there's a lot, I think, that you could draw comparisons to, and I think The Shining, if I was to make a list of the puzzle pieces that come up the most on this show. I think it's just such an influential thing that
Oh
comes
yeah.
up every time you're talking, especially horror, but in all different kinds of genres. So I think it's definitely a good one to include here. I'm going to go for my next one, and I mentioned this in my Letterboxd review as well. In 2022, when Smile came out, another movie that came out was Blonde from director Andrew Dominic, starring Ana de Armas
Mhm.
as Marilyn Monroe. And this movie, when I said that it is kind of two movies in one, it is basically a sequel to Smile, and it's kind of a follow up to the ideas of Blonde. Blonde used this partially fictionalized version of Marilyn Monroe as basically this kind of avatar to explore just the horrible treatment by the industry, by the public, by fans, just the insane stress and amount of attention that these people get, and just what they are put through. I know a lot of people really hated Blonde, especially because of what it showed happening with Marilyn Monroe, and that's the point of the movie. Like, I know it's a very difficult watch, but that is exactly on the nose what the movie is supposed to be and the whole point of it. But there's one point in that movie where there's all these screaming fans and they just become this distorted blur of
Mhm.
faces that don't even really make sense anymore. And I kind of felt Christopher Nolan did this also in Oppenheimer, by the way, during that gymnasium scene. But I feel like Smile 2 is really playing with that kind of similar effect to where people just don't even become people anymore, the way that the camera is focused on them and the way that everything in Sky Riley's vision is shot. I think that it's a really interesting way to put you in the head of this character who is feeling just this insane amount of stress from just every angle, whether it's from her fans, from the industry itself, from her handlers and her agents and manager, her momager or whatever you want to call her. Everybody in her life just wants absolutely every last ounce out of her, and that is exactly what Blonde was about.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great
It's
point.
a difficult movie, and I
Yeah.
know why a lot of people didn't like it. So,
Yeah, I struggled with it myself. Yeah,
yeah.
but it's a fair point. It's a good inclusion, I would say.
What do you got next?
Uh, Here's the thing, like, my last 2 are almost kinda tied together in a way. One, it's And it's purely just a technical thing. It just reminded me of something that was clearly, oh well, clearly this is an influence for him here. And it's the opening of the film with a tracking shot when our cop from the first movie, right, is trying to rid himself of the curse of the
Hmm.
entity. So he breaks into the drug dealer's house. But that whole thing, basically, I think the one cut, I think, is when he crashes through the window.
Right.
But the rest of that, it's all just a single cut. And of course, the first thing, being a lover of film, given my age, and immediately you go to Scorsese and like Goodfellas. I know if you
Hmm.
want to go all the way, you got to go to Murnau's like Sunrise, but still,
Sure.
but it's a tracking shot, but then it's the end result of that tracking shot at the end when he thinks maybe he's escaped, and then when I realized what Finn was gonna give me in a way is also just a dusting, a taste of kind of that French New Wave extremism, like
Mm.
Inside or High Tension,
Mm.
and just the way that just plainly the gore and the violence that is inflicted upon people in this film immediately brought me to like Asia's work or I'm like, what's the guy's name? Oh yeah, that was it, Bastillo and Mori, like who did Inside, one of my favorites, Frontiers, all that stuff.
Sure.
It felt
Sure.
like an homage to all of that, to the French New Wave there.
Yeah, it takes you to just some incredibly violent places that, like, it doesn't use gore for fun in a sequence like that. It uses
No.
it to shock, and I think that's also a thing with Vox Lux as well. It sets you on edge where you're like, oh, okay, this movie means business. And I don't know what to expect from any point forward here.
Mhm.
So yeah, a good little collection of pieces there. And yeah, that opening tracking shot. I think Parker Finn's a really interesting director because it's very easy to write him off as just this like horror guy that does jump scares, but
Yeah.
like he's also doing a lot of really interesting stuff in these movies. I don't have an M. Night Shyamalan piece, although of course, we had Trap this summer, which this movie is obviously in conversation with, but
Mhm.
I think that he kind of uses the camera in ways similar to M. Night Shyamalan, and where it's like these movies are just like fun show offy things to him, and he's just having fun making them. You could kind of tell.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I will go. So I've got one more, like, I guess, good piece, and then I've got a couple of like silly-ish pieces. So I'll just get the good one out of the way first. That's Elvis from last year. Just the way that the handlers, the enablers, they're just pushing this guy to just continue, 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 no
Mhm.
matter what. They could see that it's killing him, but they, just absolutely will not stop. Everything with the mom in this movie is just so just cringe. It's just like it's horrible. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is when she finally decides to get some help and meet with the guy who's been texting her, and she meets him in this grungy bar,
Yeah.
and he's explaining like he has this theory of how we can stop this curse, and her phone just will not stop ringing, and they show the caller ID. It's her agent, it's the manager, it's the tour manager, it's the mom, it's the producer. It's like every single person is calling, and you just get this sense of like they are just not going to let you go no matter what. If this curse doesn't get you, they're going to get you. And
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the driving force of the Elvis movie, was that this guy was just being pushed beyond his limits, and there was no getting out of that.
Yeah. No, that is good. Now, I think if I had I don't know if this counts, you have to pardon my ignorance. Th there's also like a I found a Chekhov's gun aspect to this film that I didn't quite understand until the very end of the film,
Hmm.
where she's always singing with a microphone.
Hmm.
And when you look at all the pop stars today, they all have the headset mics so they can sing and dance all at the same time. But she's
Mm.
always using a handheld microphone. And for the whole I actually like I slotted it in my mind for my show to talk about. I'm like, "That's weird. Why does she use an old microphone like that? Why is that?"
Yeah.
And then you have your conclusion. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. A very clear, deliberate choice."
Yeah. It's either that or strangle yourself with a
With
yeah.
a cord, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. Chekhov's microphone. I love it. Well, yeah, I mean that's a good segue into my two silly, stupid puzzle pieces to finish this up here. Um, First of all, to bring us back to that guy who has this whole plan to freeze her body at a Pizza Hut, by the way, an old Pizza Hut, to freeze her body because this way she can kind of die, but not really, just long
Hmm.
enough for the demon to leave or whatever. And it just doesn't work even at all. And like this is like even teased in the trailer that this is going to be like the big plan to kill the thing. So I was thinking of first of all, it's a flatliners,
Sure.
thing, but the way how it doesn't work, I was thinking of Deadpool 2 with the whole X-Force team, how you're like, oh, he's going to have this whole
Right.
team, and then they all just die immediately. So I was thinking of that was my first thing, kind of a Flatliners into Deadpool's 2 as
Hmm.
my first ridiculous one. And the other one, I couldn't let this episode go without mentioning this. The whole sequence where Sky Riley has to go talk at a like a youth in music, festival or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and everything goes horribly wrong. That's where we get the Jack Nicholson stare, and then she kind of flips out and ends up knocking that old lady off of the stage onto a table. I couldn't not think of the Naked Gun when Frank Drebin knocks the Queen off of the stage. I mean, did you think of that too, or is it just
Not
me?
until you just brought it up.
Yeah.
The but it's funny. As soon as you started to say her on the stage,
Yeah.
that's immediately where my head went to. I
Yeah.
flashed right to it. So
Good.
you're not that off the wall. You're right. It didn't
Good.
hit me in the
Good.
moment, but
Yeah.
now I do see it.
Beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, that's the last thing that I had here. Any other pieces or anything else you wanted to bring up before we get to closing thoughts?
Just I want to say one of the things I really appreciated about this film is for me, there's two things. One, I think the structure of the film is fantastic. There is and I don't know how spoilery you would want
Spoil
to
away.
get.
Yeah, at this point they better have watched the movie. So
So, but a vast majority of the runtime in this film takes place basically in her head,
mhm.
and a lot of people have a problem with that. I think I want to watch it again just to kind of see if I can spot if there's any tips or any clues as to what's happening.
Yeah.
Particularly the scene like with her friend when she says hi to her mom. Granted, you know that the mom does not respond, so or maybe her
Yeah.
mom's not even there even at that point. That's the thing, right? How much of the
Sure.
film is definitively all in her head, you're not entirely sure. So I think the structure of it though is fine, and I think that the fact that the vast majority of stuff is all in her, it potentially could all be in her head as the demon entity corrupts her. Is I love the fact that it gives her hope and then takes it away
Yeah.
and reveals in the end that you never really had any control.
Yeah.
And just that nihilism is really again is what adds, as I said, to that just permeating feeling of dread. And then finally for me, the sound design. I was able to see this in a
Mm.
Dolby theater
Me too. Me too.
and fantastic. Like, if you can't watch this in a Dolby theater, and I think it's gonna be replaced by Venom at some right,
Yeah.
is if you're gonna watch this at home, if you have the ability, I would say wear this with a nice pair of headphones because I think you really get it. That I think was things that makes it work as well as it does is the sound design on this is just incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is very crunchy and yeah, it sounds incredible. I just realized I forgot one puzzle piece I was going to bring
Oh,
up, Gaspar Noé's climax. And
mhm,
this was something off of the trailer I was already kind of planning on bringing up anyway, just from that one shot of all the fans in her apartment just kind of weirdly dancing their way down the hall.
yeah,
That sequence is just so phenomenal, and definitely reminds me of the weird dancing in that movie. That's all just like it kind of like undoes what you know about how human beings move, and that's what
right.
makes that movie so just absolutely crazy. Um, I My only other closing thought I was trying to think, and this is kind of like a question mark puzzle piece, I guess. I was trying to think of something where some kind of evil entity or even a supervillain in a comic book movie or something is trying to project its message out to as many people as possible, which is, of course, where we are left if there is
Mhm.
a sequel to this. I didn't really think of one necessarily, but I'm sure there's something where, the evil gets on TV and gets its message out to everybody
Wasn't
or
that
something like that.
the plot for the Riddler's plot in Batman Forever?
Ooh, yeah, I think you're
The
right.
sending out the radio waves or whatever to
Okay.
what? To drive people insane? I can't remember what the point of it was,
Yeah, it was something
like, what
like
he's
that. I
trying
haven't
to do?
seen Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a long time, but I think you might be right though. I think you might have filled in the blank for me there.
There you
So,
go.
yeah, good one, good one. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's pretty clear we both really like this movie a lot,
Mhm.
and I don't know that they need to make a third one, but at the same time, they left it in a very interesting place for where a movie like this goes at a much more macro level for this kind of a story. More importantly, I'm interested to see what Parker Finn does next. I mean, I know he's got that Possession remake with Robert Pattinson, which is a very strange idea. But at the same
Whoa,
time,
whoa. He's remaking Possession with
he's remaking Possession, the Sam Neill,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, you're right.
yeah, yeah, which is a crazy. But the reason why I'm a little bit okay with it, I guess, is because even he acknowledged, he was like, "You have to be insane to try to remake Possession," and so that's what I'm gonna do next. And so I like that quote from him.
I
So
wonder how that because so much of why that film works as well as it does is its time and its place
sure,
and, the
sure,
culture and stuff around it, but you know what? Luca pulled off a Suspiria remake for me, which I thought was gonna be insane
yeah,
to try to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
So, alright.
You
That's
never
interesting.
know. You never know. You get the right people together. It is possible, but
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. But yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up Smile 2. Chris, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Oh, that is great. That's a good question. I'm trying to think here. I thankfully have my notebook. What we do is we write down we do letter grades on our show. I actually
Mhm.
gave Smile 2 Jew an A minus, so now you don't have to go to thefirstrun.com and listen. Now you know I gave
Nice,
it an A
nice. We
minus.
got the whole
My co-host
gist.
Matt
Yeah.
gave it a B plus, so he
Okay.
wasn't as high on it as I was, but he enjoyed it.
Good.
Oh, I guess another weird creepy horror thing. I don't know if you've seen it. I think the most recent thing that I saw that I loved was The Substance.
Oh, loved it. I actually recorded an episode on The Substance back to back with this tonight. So
Nice.
this has been a very dark and crazy night of podcasting. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
good lord.
Yeah.
No, I think it's been a great year generally for kind of horror as well. I really like Long Legs.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great stuff out there. So it's been a good year so far, and I
Yeah.
think it's the rest of the year is going to be better. That trailer for The Brutalist,
Hmm.
as a failed artist myself, it reminded me that there is good art out there. When you see all this AI crap with everything,
Mm.
I don't know if you've seen like the latest like cover arts for a lot of the four like those Sixth Sense and and Signs. Have you seen the covers for those UHD discs?
Oh my god,
They're
no.
horrible.
Ugh. Why do they
So
why?
yeah,
There's so much like that's yeah. I just don't even understand why.
yeah,
At a
just use the
certain
original
point.
work. I don't know
Yeah,
what's the problem with that.
ridiculous.
So there
Well,
you go.
yeah, we could probably talk about that for an hour. But Chris, tell everybody where they can find you and your podcast and whatever you're up to.
Yeah, so we're on your podcasting platforms. We're everywhere. Just look for The First Run or Screen Run, and then the site is thefirstrun.com and then screenrun.fun. I gotta connect with Lady Juan. We haven't talked about it next season yet.
Oh,
She travels though. She's a big traveler now. She goes everywhere, so good for her.
yeah.
But yeah. And David, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun talking to you, so thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen. And yes, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Smile 2. Thank you to Chris Scalzo for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed wherever it is that you're listening, because we've got a lot of podcasts on the way. I've got like about 6 episodes in the can right now that are going to all be coming to you over the coming weeks and months. I also have a bunch of special stuff coming up very soon that I don't know. I may have announced by the time this goes up. I may not, so I'm not going to mention it right now. But suffice to say, keep an eye out on all the socials and everything. At Piecing Pod is where you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, all the others. And you'll know about what I've got coming up. Some special stuff, along with all those episodes that are already recorded and on their way to you. And while you're making sure you're subscribed, if you enjoy the show, maybe drop us a little 5-star rating and review. Whether that's Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Good Pods, Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening, it helps make sure that more people check out the show. And the more listeners we get, the more cool stuff we could do. And yeah, we really appreciate you being out there. You could also find our Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, from Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. I post advanced content on there. I also post video versions of some episodes of the show and a whole lot more. Again, it's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. All kinds of cool stuff from all of these different projects. And, keep listening to the show wherever it is that you're listening. But if you want to support the show, you can do that over there on the Patreon. And I'm going to close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And lately I've been focused more on the Pup Pups because we just finished up the whole pre-order campaign for my new album of songs about my pets. Lots of silly, fun stuff. But I'm not going to do that today because we're talking horror, and also because this episode's coming out right before the Halloween season. So instead, I'm going to go to my instrumental music. But I do want to keep things upbeat, not go straight up horror. But instead, I'm going to go with a track right now. Every month of the year, on the first and third Friday, I have been releasing a new single on Spotify, Apple Music, all the streaming services, under a series that I call the 24 for 2024 series. New music every other week, basically. And this is one that's coming out in a couple weeks, so you're getting a little preview of something. But it's upbeat. It's also got a little bit of a creepy vibe, so maybe it could fit a little Halloween-ish, but I definitely thought it would be a good one for the pop star mentality of Smile 2. So we get a little bit of both vibes going with this one. This song is called Almost Human, and like I said, it'll be out in a couple of weeks as a part of the 24 for 2024 series. Hope you like it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.